This is Hot Mike.
Hot Mike.
On the networks of WDAY.
WDAY.
Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2, ready to rock and roll here on this Tuesday morning. Bison quarterback Cole Payton will join us about a half hour as we get ready for the NFL draft. And when is he going to hear his name? I'm sure he'll tell us. I'm sure he knows. That's coming up in about a half hour's time. We've been planning this out here for the better part of a couple months since it became official that North Dakota State is now a football member of the Mountain West Conference, to give us the update of who these teams are, who are the good players, the coaches, stadiums, travel, all that kind of good stuff. And we're going to do that over the next few months as we get set for NDSU's first foray into FBS football. Today we're going to start with the University of New Mexico, which Bison fans have some familiarity with because they know the head football coach is one Jason Eck from South Dakota State. Sean Reider covers the Lobos. He has for the better part of nearly 4 years for the Albuquerque Journal. He joins us here this morning, getting up with us to give us the lowdown on the Lobos. Thanks for doing this, bud. I really appreciate it. Give us first your impressions when you had heard North Dakota State is moving to the Mountain West.
Yeah, it was always, I think, something that seemed like an attractive venture for the Mountain West in the sense of it made the most sense to get one of the, the big FCS schools and all that. I think the way I thought of it, North Dakota State made more sense than the kind of either the Montana schools, because the Montana schools, from what I always kind of understood, were maybe tethered together, and there would have been maybe an issue to get both of them up at the same time. But you just never knew if you never knew for sure if he was going to get North Dakota State kind of at the right window. And I think it was a little bit of a pleasant surprise at first, and I think fans in particular were really excited about it.
How about? Sorry, go ahead.
They lost all these these
yes.
teams to the Pac-12 that kind of defined a lot of the success that the Mountain West kind of had. Not all of it, to be clear, but a lot of what the success the league had in football and basketball and all that as well. And to get to get some new blood in, and the team that's been really, really successful, of course, in FCS football, we all know about that. But they're good in basketball and a lot of other stuff. Of course, it is only a football-only ad. I'll mention that. But no, I think fans have been really excited about it and very pleased to see a team like North Dakota State come in.
I loved Eck's response, Sean, when he was asked about it, 2 days after, to say he thought he was done going to that dome again. Now, they don't have to come this year. The Bison will be going to Albuquerque. Spring ball's going on. Have you talked at all with the players or staff about NDSU now being in the league?
Yeah, I was the one that asked him that question. I think the way the phrase was like, all right, did you think you were done with these guys? You think he was kind of over? Obviously, because going back to his time at South Dakota State and all that as well. But I haven't talked to a ton of players about it. The one thing I've kind of found, and I probably should talk to some of the FCS guys, the former FCS guys in particular, about it, because I think those guys would actually have some strong takes on it. The one thing I've found, because the entire time I've been here, there has always been a conference realignment narrative, and a lot of the players I've always talked to say, I don't know, I don't really care that much. We'll play whoever.
Yeah.
But coaches, Bronco Mendenhall and Danny Gonzalez, and of course Jason Eck, those guys have always had good takes on it, and Eck has a lot of respect for North Dakota State, and he's been very clear. He's like, yeah, the Fargo Dome, that's a great place to get in the league, and he thinks it's a great program to get in the league as well.
So New Mexico won 9 games last year. That was one of the maybe pleasant surprises in FBS football. Played in the Rate Bowl. Fans up here, Sean, watched that because they played the University of Minnesota in that game. What stood out about last year's team, and how much of that team is coming back in 2026?
Well, yeah, I think number one, the defense was a little bit of a revelation. You kind of knew during spring practice and fall camp that it had the makings to be, a much better defense than what it had been the last 2 years. That probably isn't saying much because it was one of the worst defenses in the country the last 2 years before last season. So you felt like, hey, there was going to be some real improvement. You just didn't know how much, and they ended up, being phenomenal rushing the passer. I think 36 sacks, which led the league. They had the Mountain West Co-Defensive Player of the Year and Jason Eck's son, Jackson Eck, who was just phenomenal at that Mike linebacker spot. Just did a lot of things really well and kind of gelled, down the final stretch of the season to win out the final 6 games. And that's kind of something that's expected to really continue. There are some missing guys from last year, notably former Idaho edge rusher Keyshawn James Newby. But UNM does return 14 starters, which is one of the highest marks in all of FBS. That marks um, a little wonky in the sense that it includes Abe Williams, who played corner last year. He's playing receiver now, and
Okay.
he might not start at receiver, of course. And then Jack Lane, with the quarterback coming back, there will be a quarterback competition during fall camp. I think Jack probably will win it at this point, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But no, they had a lot of guys that definitely were tampered with, to say the least, and received some compelling offers. And they got those guys to stay, and particularly on the defensive end and the defensive secondary too. Jackson Eck, of course, he's coming back. But you got guys like Austin Brawley and Tavian Combs, in the secondary, and Frankie Edwards, Jameer Torres. So some younger guys there that that didn't bolt for the first P4 opportunity. So I think there is a really good level of confidence in terms of the guys that bring it back.
I know you were writing yesterday, spring ball is wrapping up. There's a quarterback battle underway. Give us the lowdown on how that's going right now.
Yeah, so Jack Lane was a starter for all 13 games last year, not all 9 games. Jack, of course, transferred over with Eck from Idaho. And the thing with Jack is that he is an elite decision maker. He knows his offense extremely well, and you watch the tape, he goes everywhere he is supposed to with the ball. But he suffered a little bit of an elbow injury prior to the UCLA game, kind of a nagging thing that just kind of came back, and it hounded him the rest of the way, throughout the season. And they ended up finding out in a cleanup surgery after the season that he had a totally torn tendon in his elbow. They did not know it was that bad. So he is out for this spring and will be back during fall camp. Out throwing from the spring, I should say. He's still out there running a little bit. So they brought in Luke Moga, who's a former 4-star recruit, Oregon transfer, kind of a coup for UNM. They don't get a lot of guys like that even in the portal, frankly. And then Toa Fave is a guy who's still a freshman. He really kind of jumped up the depth chart, during bowl practice and all that. Really ended up ending the season as kind of their third string guy. So right now it's Fave and Moga kind of going back and forth. It felt like last week Fave kind of passed Moga. He was playing more consistent. He was kind of getting things done there. And then Moga had probably his best day of practice, the other day. Yesterday. Both Moga and Fave, are more dual threat guys. They have they have pretty elite track speed. I think both around like 10.5 100, like stuff like that, a little bit lower maybe. And it is interesting to see how it kind of plays out, because they can extend plays, they can take off and run it, but can they step up and be decisive in the pocket? I think yesterday was the first time we saw Moga really do that for a sustained period.
On the not necessarily football related stuff, for fans are going to go to Albuquerque, Sean, give us the lowdown stadium wise, around it, tailgating. Give us the 100,000-foot view of what New Mexico football is like on a game day if Bison fans are going to make the trip in late October.
Yeah, I think last year, out of all the years I've been here, last year was really the best year in terms of like game day experience and all that. And a lot of that was because the team was good, much better than it had been in really over 10 years. And even then, I think fans connected with this team in a way that they might not have with the Bob Davie teams that went to bowl games in 2016 and all that. But no, there is a solid tailgating scene. I don't think it's as notorious as something like Ole Miss's Grove or anything like that.
Yeah.
There are tailgates, in the lots around the stadium. The one thing, if you are going to the game as a North Dakota State fan, I would caution sometimes it gets a little backed up getting in, especially when there's a lot of interest. So I would recommend maybe trying to get to your seat early. But no, Albuquerque's a great town, and excited for North Dakota State fans to get a feel for it. Very unique, and the food here is elite. Like you have to give it a go. It's not a true Mexican food. It's not Tex-Mex. It's New Mexican. It's its own thing entirely.
I've heard that, so I'm excited about New Mexico is one of the few states I have not been to, so I'm looking forward, hopefully, to get that crossed off the list here in the fall. When we talk about travel's the other big thing, Sean. You've done it. Granted, it's different here from your position, but North Dakota State's going to go to Albuquerque. They're going to go to Honolulu. They're going to Colorado Springs. They're going to go to Las Vegas. Frankly, those are the 4 best teams in the league. Regardless of distance, though, that's 4 really difficult games for the Bison to be put in.
Yeah, no, I looked at the schedule immediately and had kind of a, hey, well, welcome to the Mountain West kind of thought, right? Like, and I don't know how that appeal or the rule change that would make them eligible for a bowl, and then I believe also to compete for a Mountain West championship.
Yes.
I don't know how that's coming along at this point, but even if that they were able to compete, yeah, they would have a tough slate. But I don't know. I think it's I don't know if fans have maybe tempered expectations, but you really, I think in the Mountain West, you're kind of getting some of the best locations and some of the best trips, frankly. I mean, Vegas is always a good draw, but I mean, if you can do it, Honolulu, heck yeah, like that's phenomenal. And in Albuquerque too. I mean, this is a place that doesn't always have really good football teams or teams expected to be really good. And I think being able to go out and see that kind of atmosphere is pretty neat.
Bison head coach Tim Polisic, Sean, told us that after his experience as being OC at Wyoming about the type of players there. Certainly skill positions, secondary are just different than what North Dakota State's used to. You've covered it. Give us the overview on the type of players that maybe are just unique to the Mountain West, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the Mountain West as a whole, with it, in my time covering it, with maybe the exception of Boise, because Boise's always recruited. You could say, along with like Boise and Memphis, and I guess now with like USF, like you could always say those are the teams that, and I guess the old UCF too, frankly, you could always say those teams that had the most talented kind of G6 rosters.
Yep.
Year in and year out, it was always one of those, and Boise always recruited at a really high level. But I think the thing with the Mountain West, and I think it's the thing that's kind of rankled coaches and fans, is that there are coaches that will identify a guy and say like, hey, this was a 2-star 3-star guy that wasn't like super highly touted or anything like that, and he was in a really competitive state. Get coaches out there and get him to the program, and you develop him, and all of a sudden he's getting a $375K offer to go to a Power 4 school. It's like, well, you guys didn't recruit him or anything like that, right? So I think it is more of a league that certainly in this new era is probably going to have to pride itself on kind of picking diamonds in the rough and developing them even more. But there are good players, and I think you'll see that with the draft this year. We'll see where like Chris Johnson goes, but like Chris Johnson wasn't an insanely highly touted recruit, but for my money, he's one of the best cornerbacks I've seen in my time here in person. He's going to end up getting selected either I think probably Friday, but maybe if you leaked in a Thursday, that'd be pretty crazy.
I have to ask on just with the departures, this is going to be new for you as well. I mean, Boise, San Diego State, Utah State, Colorado State, all gone. So how different is this league going to look now when you add UTEP, Northern Illinois, and North Dakota State into the mix?
Yeah, I think it's I think when they added UTEP initially and then Grand Canyon and basketball, I was like, are they going to try and maybe for like more of a regional feel? And that's kind of impossible now unless you're like the SEC. Like, of course, the MAC threw it out the window, getting Sac State in there and UMass and basketball and all that. But no, I think I think the way I look at it is that I do think. Particularly with like UNM, like you look at their schedule and I see a lot of people like, oh, they're going to be favored to win like 10 games and all that. I'm like, they probably will be favored to win 10 games on paper, probably maybe 10 or 9 games, on paper before the season, but it's still a tricky league. Like you still have a lot of tough outs. Like nobody wants to go play in Laramie in late November, and nobody wants to play Air Force in the final game of the season when you're already all beat up. And then here you go. I know cut blocking isn't what it used to be, but you still get pretty banged up playing Air Force. And I think there are still a lot of tough outs in the league. And I do think UNLV to me, like. I think it was really important to kind of make sure that they stayed in the fold too, because I think they have an opportunity to really take off and kind of be in that that same stratosphere as what Boise had been and what Memphis has been and all that in terms of having really talented rosters year in and year out and kind of building something up.
2 last things for you. I think another adjustment is for fans getting used to when TV dictates the games. Bison fans have been used to, Sean, hey, we know the game's going to be at 2:30 on a Saturday months in advance. What is this like as a reporter? We're getting into this now of finding out basically 12 days out when the game and what time it's going to be played at.
Yeah, it's not always the worst, but it's not always the most fun. There have been a couple times where you get hit with a weird late kick, and you're kind of like, all right, like fine, I guess, but like we'll make it work. But no, I do think that's something I didn't even think about, frankly, with North Dakota State. But yeah, it is a little bit of an adjustment, but I'm certain everybody can make it all work.
The bowl is the last part of it because that's all, again, a brand new world, and it looks like we'll find out early May is when the oversight committee will meet to sign off if North Dakota State and Sacramento State will be immediately eligible. Give us how the Mountain West tie-ins, I know that got announced over the weekend. It looks like everything is going to stay the same outside of the Poinsettia Bowl coming back where the Mountain West champ will likely go to.
Yeah, the Poinsettia Bowl, and that replaces the LA Bowl if I'm the Gronk's LA Bowl or whatever the heck it was.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Part of me, it's a little tough to rattle off the top of my head. I don't have the tie-in order off the top of my head.
That's okay.
The Poinsettia Bowl, the New Mexico Bowl, and then UNM played in the Rate Bowl last year not because it is a true Mountain West affiliation game, but if the Big 12 or the Big 10 can't fill any of those slots, then the Mountain West has first dibs there. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad that I'm blanking.
I got Idaho Potato Bowl,
yes,
and
the
then
Idaho Potato Bowl. Thank you.
And then for Bison fans, the Frisco Bowl, which is obviously where the FCS championship game has been forever. So North Dakota State knows all about Frisco, if that's a possibility as well.
Yes, I think that's like the Scooters Coffee Bowl.
Correct.
Now or
yes.
whatever.
Yes.
Which that's a great narrative too. I didn't even think of that. If they're eligible to make a bowl and get in, that would be a pretty good narrative. But I don't know if fans are tired of going to Frisco. But
yeah, well, if they had another chance, I think they'd sign up. They'd sign up to do it. My last thing for you, just give me your thought. New Mexico won 9 games. Can they duplicate that again in 2026 in your mind?
I think they can.
Yeah.
I think the path to doing so is maybe a little more fraught than I think fans would like to give it credit for. I think, they need to get a lot healthier at receiver, and they need to kind of prove that they have more difference makers in that receiver room than they did last year. I think they're bringing 4 starters back on the offensive line, which is great, but I think all those guys need to improve. And while I really like a lot of things in this defense, I think it's an element too of, they got to stay healthy there. And, the things that we're seeing that are promising, in terms of stuff going on with the secondary and stuff going on up front, those things really need to become mainstays. And I don't think they're going to be able to replicate, 36 sacks like they did last season. But if they really need to make sure they're finding ways to put pressure on the passer and kind of get the job done there.
This was great, man. I really appreciate you giving us the lowdown on New Mexico. We'll do this again once we get closer to the start of the season, all right?
Dom, awesome talking with you, man.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate it. Sean Reider joining us in the Albuquerque Journal. Give us the lowdown, our first, the lowdown on the Lobos on our move to the Mountain West coverage. We'll do this periodically now over the next few months. That's team number 1. We still got 8 others to go to give us a little perspective of these teams. New Mexico comes in off a 9-win year with a fan base that I think was pretty rejuvenated after what they did a season ago under Jason Eck. And obviously the Bison will be going there October the 24th, part of the gauntlet of games they got to play on the road. Just thinking about it again this morning, I was driving into work. Like, man, 2 trips to California. Got to go to New Mexico. Got to go to Hawaii. Got to go to Colorado. There's just it's a lot that's involved here with this upcoming football season. Excited about it, and there's your look at New Mexico. We'll do another one probably next week. Trying to figure out maybe Air Force we'll try to hit on, or Wyoming probably next up as well. The Cowboys will be coming to Fargo, as we know, on homecoming in October. All right, let's break. We'll get caught up on a few things. Don't forget Cole Payton here in about 15 minutes to chat about his draft prospects. As we roll on a Tuesday morning edition of Hot Mike, we're back right after this.